a conversation with Peter and me about mostly non-art stuff. So this is 12/21/2019. It's around 10 a.m. Central Time here, and it's been 11 days since my beloved Oscar and Kiwi died. Jess and I are going to be going to look at a local Humane Society's animals. We might get a cat or two. Yeah, you can come in though. What?
You're recording?
Yeah.
I'm gonna come in. I'm in
Okay.
pajamas. Why?
Okay.
I thought you said you were gonna just talk. Why are you
No.
recording casual talk?
It's not cat. I didn't say it was. I said we were recording.
Oh.
My wife Jessica, who always listens to what I say, and so that's that regarding the cats. And then I did watch. Maybe we could just talk briefly here. I watched on Netflix. We don't have it, but I borrowed from my in-laws. So Netflix. I watched The Irishman. I thought it was too long and a rather pointless tale. It was well enough made, well enough acted, but Pacino is not good as Jimmy Hoffa. He was doing Pacino, and it just seemed like an old man movie. It wasn't as bad as the worst old man movies of Bergman or Fellini, but it was just there was really no point to it. The characters weren't compelling. The De Niro character wasn't compelling. The Joe Pesci character, was different than his over the top stuff with Scorsese before, but there just was no reason for it. What did you think?
I found all of the characters relatively pointless.
Yeah.
I thought that it was a vast come down from some of his better films. Even Casino, I mean, it's a pale imitation of things in Casino. I thought Pacino showed some promise in the early scenes and then became more and more cartoonish as the film went on. I thought De Niro had a couple good moments acting-wise, but nothing else really to show for it. I thought it was despite being ridiculously long, I thought it was incredibly predictable.
Yeah.
I knew what was going to happen at every given moment. And then there were scenes in it that were usually just homages to his greater films that were vastly inferior. And I do think that as far as being well made, it's well made in sort of like a journeyman way. There's nothing Scorsese in it. It looks very generic, a generic Netflix movie.
The opening where he's going down the hallway of the old folks' home to see the De Niro characters. Why are we doing that? There's no kinetic energy there. It's rather pointless. There was the scenes. There's the little side plot with the daughter played by Anna Paquin, who's revulsed she's revulsed by her father, which is good. But since we don't ever get to know anything about this character, it's kind of pointless. And then there's like the one scene where, well, the de-aging process thing looked ridiculous.
Yes.
And then there's De Niro throwing some guy through his glass door, and then the guy just rolls around and he lets De Niro.
Can you see too when he's thrown to the glass door that it's obvious CGI, whereas 20, 30 years ago, and that's what amazes me is this is made in 2018, 2019. And yet, if you look at Goodfellas, that film looks more modern and fresher than this. And when he's thrown through the glass door, you can see the CGI glass. And it's just a ridiculous scene.
It just seemed like plate glass. I don't know if it was CGI, maybe it was, but it just seemed like plate glass. And the whole thing, because De Niro, I mean, I'm 54. The character, when we first meet him, is like late 50s, is around 40. So he supposedly ages 40 plus years, but you can tell his body is that of an old man.
Yes.
He moves like an old man. It's just, I don't know why. The one thing that was interesting for you, though, is if you look at about the 25 or 26-minute mark, there's a scene where you see a church in the background, and apparently they use this church, St. Matthias, which is about 3 or 4 blocks where I grew up from in Ridgewood in New York. And there's a scene where you look down and you see, if you about 25 or 26 minutes, and you see some old cars, and you see down a road to a big avenue. That's Underdunk Avenue, looking down to Myrtle Avenue, and right behind, and I when I saw the garages, there's about 4 or 5 wooden door garages. I said, "Holy shit! There's St. Matthias in the background." I grew up there. the last time I had a moment like that was in Do the Right Thing 30 years ago, which was in a different direction. But I mean, that was filmed in New York. It's supposed to be like Philadelphia or something, or Scranton or something, but it's New York, and it's Underdunk Avenue, looking down the way towards Myrtle Avenue, and right on the right hand side there you see the backs of some buildings, and there used to be a 5 and 10 there called Woolworths, and so I remember that just struck me. I was like, holy shit, that's my neighborhood.
I did want to ask you, related to The Irishman too. What did you think of like the 20 or 30 minutes towards the end? That was the only thing that I thought was different from Scorsese, but I also thought it was pretty weak
Yeah.
how he executed.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with the father praying and stuff. Again, it's this Catholic bullshit that
And compared to Big Frank too, as a character, comparing the two Franks, Big Frank is irredeemable and he knows it. Whereas this Frank character, Scorsese's trying to add extra layers towards the end and making us try to sympathize with a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it's on a scale of 1 to 100, I give it maybe a 70. It's passable. It's but even if it had cut an hour, it might get up into the high 70s, maybe top out at 80. But it's nowhere near a great film. And again, the whole thing is rather pointless. The two mob movies that he made that were the best were the early Mean Streets, which was raw and gave a sense of young guys in their prime, or heading towards their prime, and then Goodfellas, obviously.
Do you think that a lot of these great directors were created by necessity? Do you think that you told, I think that you wrote in one of your reviews that Scorsese needs to go back to small budgets so that he can really push himself creatively. This movie was made for like something like $165 million, and you can't see the money on the screen.
Yeah. I mean,
so it obviously was just padding De Niro and Pacino's paychecks, as well as whatever DP that they had that did this horrible de-aging process.
Well, that was, I think, done by, I saw a 20-minute thing on Netflix afterwards, like a 25-minute conversation. That was done by Industrial Light and Magic, the one who do the special effects stuff. So